This is Ambazonia Calling. News, analysis, commentary, opinion, editorials. Ambazonia Calling is a co-production of Africa Freedom Network, the Missions Tribune, and Compass Free Press. Welcome. My name is Ntumfoyn Herbert, and I bring revolutionary greetings from our studios in Washington, D.C. to all of you, friends of Ambazonia and fellow Ambazonians on Ground Zero and across the globe.
Here is a representative of the people addressing a senior officer of the military of the Cameroonese Republic about genocide. This is the monk.
Truth, unity, and the increasing relevance for legitimate elections is the balance of power shifting. This is Divine Angie.
As Ambazonians have observed and experienced over the last 2 years of total carnage in Ambazonia, the BOYO regime has, without a doubt, made toilet paper out of the Geneva Conventions and its protocols. This is C. Ajinvo Ambe.
There will never exist a truly free Ambazonia unless that Ambazonia is also home of a free press. This is Lambert Mbom.
The most common tactic of President Paul Biya is that of conjuring up enemies of the people in a bid to rally their people against an imaginary foe while distracting them from the real enemy, the dictator himself and his treasury-looting cronies, Tata Mentan.
The decision of the Confederation of African Football is being viewed worldwide as the worst tsunami to have hit President Biya. Innocentia, Ambazonia Calling.
If the leaders think they can make a deal for themselves and on the backs of the people, Ambazonians just sent a very strong signal, not under our watch. Those who have ears should hear. This is Jude Agua Osugen for Ambazonia Calling.
We will begin this Sunday morning with our news wrap-up. We will delay our editorial. Please wait for it. We've got lined up on it that lady who pulled out the dictionary this week to insult Ambazonia Calling properly. So don't go anywhere. You got to hear this. Starting us off right away with the first part of our news wrap-up for the week is Bobe Innocentia.
The abducted leader of Ambazonia's self-styled interim government group, Siseko Ayuk Tabe, has proclaimed his Ambazonian nationality in Cameroon's Kangaroo military court. Ayuk Tabe and 9 other Ambazonian leaders shocked the military court in Cameroon Thursday as they took turns denying any impugned Cameroon nationality on them. Meantime, court documents show that the prosecution has over 60 witnesses lined up to testify against Ayuk Tabe and co. The names include those of several paramilitary officers as well as obvious names of some Ambazonians. Charges against Ayuk Tabe and co. include lack of possession of a Cameroon ID as well as secession from the colonial state. 10 U.S. senators are calling on the U.S. Secretary of State, Honorable Michael Pompeo, to emphasize the critical importance of a political solution to the festering crisis between La République du Cameroun and Ambazonia. While the December 7th letter highlights the commitment to continue fighting Boko Haram in Cameroon's northern regions, it reminds the Secretary of State of U.S. mediation resources. The genocidal state of Cameroon has killed the father of the outspoken Roman Catholic cleric, Reverend Father Gerard Jumbam, in a burn down the villages campaign Thursday. Mr. Vincent Jumbam, the father of the Reverend Father Gerard Jumbam, was an unrepentant southern Cameroonian of the original SCNC stock. Observers called it Black Thursday in Molubu State as the black smoke from the burning houses snaked through the open skies.
Everybody is just crying. Everybody. It's very sad. Very sad history. Why?
Still in Buyu State, there is a manhunt for a insult crown prince who allegedly shot and killed 2 other princes Thursday. Sources have maintained that the crown prince on the run has been working hand in glove with the forces who previously kidnapped Fonsem Binglo 1. You're listening to Ambazonia Calling. I am Innocent here. Stay tuned for more news wrap-ups.
We must go and use every forum that we have to remind the world that the people of Ambazonia are being massacred and slaughtered on a daily basis, and the time has come for the world to rise, and that the world must now begin to speak about the question of Ambazonia and their right to self-determination.
There are 2 Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water, who is the sugar and who is the water?
Doubting Thomases who think that this is a battle which will be concluded through military action will discover to their shock and chagrin at once that it will not happen.
This is Ambazonia Calling.
Still ahead in this edition, we have The Devil Unmasked with Professor Emmanuel Tatamenta. We have a winner for the Nyamfuka of the Week. And we are not done until we have heard our letter to Joshua. So stay tuned, kick back, relax, and enjoy Ambazonia Calling. It would appear that La République du Cameroun is simply inventing the names of witnesses that are supposed to enter an appearance against Siseko Ayuk-Tabe and his 9 closest aides. In a note posted by Anonymous and forwarded on WhatsApp Saturday night, one of the nieces writes, "Good day, brother. Please, my aunt's name is on that list. Tima Bridget Njie is innocent. Her name was taken from those that lost their shed at the food market when there was a fire, and she's begging you to tell the world she is not there," meaning she's not among those who have volunteered to witness against Siseko Ayuk-Tabe and the 9. When the food market was burned the first time, the note says, some of them were not compensated. Their names were taken and their numbers, but only for them to see their names appearing on the list without their consent, meaning La République du Cameroun is cooking the books even before its own military tribunal. Shame. Earlier this week, Aya Abine, the president of the Aya Foundation, granted an interview to Equinox Television in which he discussed what he considers the possible beginnings of a solution to the Ambazonia problem. A solution, he says, would have to take Siseko Ayuk-Tabe walking free from jail, would take the reconstruction of villages, would take hundreds of years for reconciliation and forgiveness to ever occur if it does, but one in which the possibility even exists that should La République kill everyone, the stones and the soil of Ambazonia will rise to fight for the people of Ambazonia. Here is an extensive excerpt of the solution as envisaged by Aya Abine.
The AGC would do nothing. They cannot control a situation they have no control of. The control is in the diaspora, the governing council, the Mac Barretters, the Akoson Pauline, all those people, they know them. Those are the people in control. There is nobody on the ground that has any manner of control at the situation on the ground. So that conference is not even necessary, honestly. Take out Sissoko from that place you've put him. That man is the unifying factor for the separatists. Bring him out of that place. If Mr. Sissoko gets out of that place, and all those who are detained, and says, let us give dialogue a chance, I bet you 70% of those who pick up arms would listen to him. The situation grew worse when he was picked up. Before he was picked up, how many men went down? When he went down, then Ayabacho said, okay, I have been telling you the arms is the only way around. Arms are the only way out of this nonsense. Give me the chance, let me do what I have to do. And it became an armed struggle from the diplomatic way out of it that Mr. Sissoko was running. He has no place. Pull him out of that place. All those detained, cease fire. Reconstruct the villages, rebuild those places you burned down. Bring down the refugees. And it will go naturally. You won't even need to be preaching those humanitarian. We will not even need that thing, that humanitarian whatever. It will be useless. Because there is no better relief than people seeing their loved ones out of detention, and those who've lost everything get back at least what they've lost, or just something seemingly. And all those who are in Nigeria, my families in Nigeria, are dying there, back and from the bushes, back into homeland. That is enough relief. Only then can we find a way out of the crisis. Everything we're doing, we're wasting time. We're fighting and killing ourselves. This thing will go on for 50 and 100 years. You cannot kill everybody. And even if you kill everybody, the stones would avenge for the blood that spills on them. The soil will get up and start fighting.
You have plenty of show yet to come, so don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
The people of West Cameroon cannot be your slaves. The people of West Cameroon are not, you did not conquer them in war. The problem we have in West Cameroon is the problem that will bring down Cameroon. When people have had pent-up anger and pain, humiliation, for over 50 years, when it bursts out, you will never be able to control it.
They will sooner realize that the people of Ambazonia will not surrender. They will sooner realize that you can arrest and kill, but the more you arrest and kill, the more you energize the people's spirit.
Back now with us is Bobe Innocentia with the second part of our news wrap-up for the week.
AGC's leadership has announced that kicking out La République du Cameroun from the Commonwealth of Nations is its next strategic target.
We must get Cameroon thrown out of the Commonwealth of Nations. The strategy is being designed. And as we approach the 10th of December, we must launch an international campaign to expose the butchers of Yaoundé. 57 years ago, the devil crossed the Mongo River. They have consciously used terror to accomplish their aims, to protect what they presume are the spoils of conquest. They thought their brand was a terror of the powerful and invincible against the weak and defeated.
Dr. Cho Ayaba made the disclosure in a weekly address Saturday.
Our struggle must be seen as a campaign for our collective survival.
Even as he announced the creation of the Ambazonia Counter-Terrorism Committee that encourages Ambazonian soldiers working in the army of La République du Cameroun to turn their arms against the real enemies, not innocent Ambazonians.
We will be setting up an anti-terrorism institution to demobilize terrorist forces of Cameroon. All those who don't have blood on their hands will be sent back home. All Ambazonian fighters fighting within the terrorist forces of Cameroon who don't have blood on their hands will be integrated within the Ambazonian Defense Forces. All those who have murdered our people, be they Ambazonians or Cameroonians, will face justice. I want you to raise your gun and ask yourself, who is the real enemy? Who is the one that has murdered your people? Who is the one that has dispossessed you of your homeland? Who is the one that has looted you of your resources? Point the barrel of your gun on the real enemy.
Ambazonians in the diaspora are wrapping up a 3-day conference in Boston, Massachusetts. Conveners have been working on putting together a platform that supposedly moves the revolution to the next level with ideas coming from one and all. The Ambazonia Defense Force, ADF, has commissioned a new Brigadier General. Brigadier General Big Number is the former assistant under General Ivo. He is the same revered fighter that appeared in a video several months ago with a gunshot wound to his knee inflicted by the ASC. A shooting death of a young woman by unknown forces has been reported in Bello, BOYO State. Sources say the young lady, whose only name we got as Rina, was a popular woman in the subdivision. Finally, I would be remiss at this moment if I failed to apologize to you, listeners of Ambazonia, Ambazonia Calling, and faithful subscribers, for an honest error that I made in last week's edition of Ambazonia Calling. I reported that Barrister Johnso, lead lawyer for Sisiko Ayuktabe and the 9 others abducted in Nigeria, had been arrested. Indeed, it was a mixed-up in names with another lawyer practicing in Bamenda who was temporarily detained by agents of La République du Cameroon. To Barrister Johnso, I am sorry about the mix-up and certainly did not wish you to be arrested or stop you from catching your flight to Yaoundé for the defense of your clients and the struggle. This is Innocentia for Ambazonia Calling.
The Missions Tribune newspaper has got an incredible deal for you. It is the only American newspaper to have carried the story of Ambazonia on 3 of its cover pages in 2018. The only U.S. newspaper to have published a 1-page advertisement on the Ambazonian cause in 2018. The only American newspaper which published a story on Ambazonia in every single edition in 2018 has an incredible deal for all Ambazonians. If 2,000 Ambazonians based anywhere in continental United States of America take a 1-year subscription for home delivery of the paper, the Missions Tribune will deliver over 500 copies to every single member of the U.S. Congress for the entire year 2019 and keep the Ambazonian story alive. Go to the Missions Tribune to subscribe for the entire year of home delivery of the paper and ensure that our story is alive in the newspaper and it is in the front of U.S. congressmen and women for the entire year 2019. For your subscription, go to themissionstribune.com. For those of you who have been waiting, you will not be disappointed. Here is our editorial with Lambert Mbom featuring Madame Kosh.
Last week witnessed many virulent and acerbic attacks by some Ambazonians against Ambazonia Calling.
I find the recent Ambazonian Calling by the Ntumfoyn Herbert team as not only notoriously scandalous, unscrupulous, and totally unprofessional, but also as a bandwagon that is breeding a roller coaster of amateurs.
Amen, my brother. He is a very, very selfish coward, Bro Herbert. I never knew that Bro Herbert is as dull. He spends his time going into encyclopedia looking for grammatic adjectives to describe negativity.
Leading the attacks were especially those Ambazonians sympathetic to the interim government group who accused this program of perceived biased reporting.
You are describing and insulting our leaders. God will punish you. You will never see good. Let me tell you, with that extrapolated mouth like a ghost.
Some feel that the interim government group is a prime target of Ambazonia Calling.
These idiots sit out there and they make stories. They make all kinds of stories. Look, Eric, I don't know what is happening out there. You better tell Bo Herbert, Ayabacho, and his friends that what they are looking for, they will never get it.
Many of the attacks were right down on the gutter of insults, mudslinging, and outright lack of respect.
A dumb man! Do you think that education is wiseness? You are educated but very, 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 very dull. You have no wisdom. For from the beginning you were shouting with your large mouth like horse, ugly face. I thought that you were a good person who can help to push this revolution forward.
The attackers share one thing in common. They believe that the restoration and recognition of Ambazonia must become the privatized enterprise of the interim government group, which must be free of any criticism as it pursues that job.
I think they are trying to sabotage this defense. It will not work.
Ambazonia Calling makes no secret of what its goal is. The signature tune of this program is very clear about what we do: news, analysis, commentary, opinions, and editorials. On numerous occasions on the air and privately via email and WhatsApp communication, our team has invited all who have views, opinions, and editorials to share to provide same to Ambazonia Calling. There will never exist a truly free Ambazonia unless that Ambazonia is also home of a free press. Anyone in authority seeking to serve our people must also sign up to being criticized often, if not always. It is the smallest price anyone in public service should expect and welcome. The criticism will not always be fair or even accurate. Yet, even biased and unfair criticism is far better than the tyranny of a one and indivisible interim government rule. A free press will always be better than dictatorship. Ambazonians have unfortunately lived for so long under the delirious effects of dictatorship that anything calling itself a government, even of Njan group, adopts a pattern of behavior closer to tyranny than to open government. The many surrogates of the IG group who would sell their grandmother's head to see Ambazonia Calling silenced want Ambazonians to live in the post-truth era.
It is not done. You can't sit and begin to condemn the IG, condemn Chris Ano, and making it. If these people go weak, the whole country will fall.
They have a scary aversion for the truth. The truth in this case simply being that the IG group, or any other group for that matter, will never be perfect. And even if it were perfect, a free press will still have their right to challenge its perfection. Ambazonia Calling will never satisfy all views and opinions, no matter how hard we try. In times of crisis and uncertainty, people will turn to or away from voices that echo or fail to echo their concerns and fears, even if those concerns or fears are strident and divisive. Ambazonia Calling is not for sale. It is the product of journalism, not a talk show featuring talking heads meant to fit a certain agenda. An infatuation with a very short segment we do each week on the dumbest ideas or actions, called Nyamfuka of the Week, fails to recognize that the rest of the program focuses on keeping the genocidal violence visited on Ambazonians before the world's eyes.
There are radio stations that you open to begin the Nyamfuka, with your voice like a devil. You are a devil from the pit of hell. Go!
Ambazonia Calling makes no claim to perfection. Mistakes will be made, and that happens. It will be our duty, nay, it will be our sacred duty to correct those mistakes, to own up to errors, and to make the necessary corrections. An error, such as a mix-up of names, is not the journalistic earthquake some made of it last week. It is much ado about nothing, especially when those making a mountain out of the anthill also acknowledge that it was a mere case of mistaken identity.
Yes, Benjamin, yes, of Amity Law Chambers.
He was kidnapped by I don't know who, and 1 or 2 days after he was released.
That's true. We actually reported that on National Telegraph, so we are just surprised that Ambazonia Calling is actually saying that you have...
Instead of attributing it to me and claiming that Akérèmọ́dá will lead, which defense is that?
Worse than calling for errors to be corrected whenever made, the simply laughable aspects of last week included threats and the Ambazonia Calling team.
Go, Herbert. If I can see you, I can take knife and knife you down. You are a devil with your family. After we finish, we'll gun you down. All of you there.
Our team does not include any spring chickens. It is much easier to reason with us than to intimidate or bully us. Aldous Huxley rightly cautions that great is truth, But still greater from a practical point of view is a silence about the truth. By simply not mentioning certain objects, totalitarian propagandists have influenced much opinion more effectively than they could have by more eloquent denunciations. Ambazonia Calling is not a propaganda tool at the service of the self-proclaimed leaders of the new Ambazonia. Our job is to x-ray all and sundry. We report on all, but you have to admit that between a very prolific Cho Ayaba, delivering speeches, eloquent speeches nearly every week, and an interim government group leadership whose speeches tend to be once in a blue moon, Cho Ayaba will get quoted more frequently than the other. Ambazonia Calling does not need lessons from anyone on focusing on the enemy, Biya and his cohorts. We do that job much better than the programs kissing up to groups out there. Two permanent and prominent features of Ambazonia Calling, namely the enthralling unmasking of the devil by the indefatigable Dr. Tata Mentan and mouth-watering letter to Joshua that wraps up the program, take no prisoners in giving it to the colonial regime. However, if we chose to focus on the enemy by turning a blind eye to the fatal errors we are making, we will not need the enemy to destroy our cause, because we will be doing an excellent job of destroying it ourselves. Many good-willing and good-meaning Ambazonians can, and do frequently and unwittingly harm the revolution. Like the name suggests, it is a calling. We at Ambazonia Calling treat this as a vocation. We owe this to Mother Ambazonia, not individuals or groups. We seek to advance the recognition of Ambazonia, not the recognition of groups or individuals, by seeking out and proclaiming whatever truth will set us free, even if it does so by hurting some individuals or groups. We understand that some Ambazonians are decided on rejecting knowledge and are devoted to substituting emotions for thoughts. Finally, Ambazonia Calling is a baby that is growing and strives to be honest, fair, balanced, and aggressive in its coverage without losing sight of its audience. The program has tremendous room for growth and is open to contributions from across the spectrum. Stop just sitting there and complaining. Offer your own commentaries, analysis, opinions, and editorials for possible inclusion on Ambazonia Calling. Deliver some of those great speeches this revolution has seen, and you will not have to invite us to use excerpts from it. Issue some dull and boring speeches, and you are certain we will not pick them up. We must wake up and smell the coffee. It is very easy not to be in the news for the wrong reason. Do not do the wrong thing. This is Lambert Mbom for Ambazonia Calling.
Welcome to our special interview segment, The Devil Unmasked, The Truth Out. Welcome, Professor Tata Menta, to The Devil Unmasked.
Thanks for giving me the floor, Ntumfoyn, and let us jointly unmask all the tactics that form the basic toolkit or basic tricks for most dictators like President Paul Biya.
Let us open with these imaginary enemies of the people that dictators are infatuated with.
Thank you. Let me see that from your lips, Ntumfoyn. On top of big enemies of the people or threats to national security, these imagined foes by President Paul Biya also double as scapegoats or every single thing that goes wrong in the Satanic Republic of Cameroon. Through the skillful use of mediated propaganda, as we know of CRTV or Cameroon Tribune and the allied media, all the foes bedeviling dictator Biya's nation are repeatedly and consistently ascribed to the imagined foe till a considerable section of French Cameroonians believes it and sees nothing wrong with Hitler Biya continuing in power. After all, to them, he had done nothing wrong. All the problems facing the country are as a result of external determination, Boko Haram or Anglophone secessionists. Never mind that Biya and his tried and tested never-do-well kleptocrats are ravaging the economy, causing poverty, poor health, poor infrastructure, or creating unemployment.
What role exactly does brute force play in maintaining dictators in power?
Whether you cite Francois Duvalier Tonton Macoute in Haiti or Idi Amin's murderous secret service in Uganda in the past, the use of brute force has become synonymous with the Lucifer Biya gangster regime in Yaoundé. Ntumfoyn, where other types of leaders would invite you, for example, for talks or negotiations, the Biya gangsters will pummel you into submission. You can see him creating dead on arrival commissions one after another that solve no problem but simply distract attention from a use of brute force, now chemical weapons, and you may name even many more.
Are there any specific examples you would like to cite?
Examples are not far to seek in the Biya tottering political house of cards. Regime-sponsored assassinations, burning of markets and homes, torture, abductions, raping, and rampant arrests are the stock in trade. The provocative takeover of the GCA board, which was hard-won by a state noted for spoiling everything it touches, is a glaring example. Even the recent decree ordering Ambazonian restoration forces to lay down their arms and surrender to its bloodthirsty regime is another case in point.
Some of the genocidal acts that we are seeing in Ambazonia are really surprising. Some of them were carefully designed. Most of them were carefully designed, I dare say. And soldiers were trained to perform all of these gruesome acts.
Does it really surprise anyone to find that the Biya gangster regime used the Rwandan genocide maestro Colonel Tionis Bagosora to train Cameroon genocidaire in Jum South region in the late 1990s before he was forced back to Rwanda to face trial on crimes against humanity in the Gacaca courts? The genocidaires, as I would like to remind you, were trained under the supervision of General Asoeman, who are the ones who are touching markets and homes in Douala, Yaoundé, Bamenda, and all over the country, as you will see in examples like what was done in Carrefour Vogt in Yaoundé and many parts of the country, the food market in Bamenda.
In addition to brute force, could you please describe what dictatorships do with appeasement, with co-optation, to get their regime to continue to survive?
Thank you for exhibiting that aspect with your question, Ntumfoyn. That is very, very true. I wish to warn immediately here that citizens living in a dictatorship should be wary of opposition parties being co-opted. This is where Lucifer Biya somehow incorporates the opposition into National Stealing League through negotiated settlements. If I got your question right, I would like to refer you to what Victor Epiengome usually calls belly politics. This prolongs the stay of Lucifer Biya in power due to his democracy apaisée or mollified democracy.
At that point, can we continue to blame only the dictator?
Through co-optation, the fate of Hitler Biya and those who have been co-opted like Buba Bello Megare, Herbert Issa Chiroma Bakari, and others become intertwined. Where you would ordinarily blame Hitler Biya alone, it becomes not only his fault, but also that of those who have been co-opted like the SDF chairman Frundi, the Mbandams, and others. Let them lose their sitting allowances in Parliament or their Ford Rangers. Those who have been co-opted are not so eager to dismantle the regime that has co-opted them. Even if they wanted to, Hitler Biya's carrot and stick approach ensures that they stay in line or toe the line. Does it surprise anybody that members of the National Assembly from Southern Cameroon cannot walk out of an assembly that ignores them with scorn, or university professors rooting hard to surrender all their academic values to show up a ruinous dictatorship? Some, like Professor Femi Ndongo, even go as far as equating Lucifer Biya with God the Creator. Hell no. not the very God who created Tata-Mentan.
And definitely also not the God who created Ntumfoyn Herbert. To fear kwa, as our Nigerian brothers will say, dictatorships are not liked very much around the world within the international circles. But how do they find legitimacy? How do they manage to survive so long?
Thank you for chiming in on what we social scientists call regime legitimation. In the social sciences, Ntumfoyn, legitimation theoretically refers to the process whereby an act, process, ideology, in this case, the dictator becomes legitimate by his attachment to norms and values widely shared within the community.
Now, could you give us some examples?
Let me quickly give an example here. A strong pro-French stance in a country like the Satanic Republic of Cameroon that is predominantly francophone and frowns at anti-French leanings move mountains for dictator Biya in as far as the legitimation process is concerned. No wonder Biya does all it takes to erase all elements of Anglo-Saxon culture in Cameroon to appease his mollified francophones. The blatantly annoying policies of flooding the judiciary in southern Cameroon's common law jurisdiction with civil law francophone judges, prosecutors and bailiffs are not anything new. But apparently, as I would say, it resonates well with francophones, even people like Professor Maurice Kamto, who is now crying foul against his stolen victory. Simply put, Ntumfoyn, by strongly standing and pushing for principles, agendas and ideologies that resonate with masses, Hitler Biya legitimizes himself and could stay in power longer as a direct result of the legitimation process by an indolent francophone humanity. Ordinarily, as you would very well understand, regime legitimation comes through winning free, fair and credible elections. Most dictators, however, failed to do this, hence the need for an alternative means of legitimation such as mediated brainwashing, propaganda, brute force, and co-optation.
Do you have any specific message this week for Ambazonian citizens?
Yes, Ntumfoyn, I cannot hesitate to share a word with our bastardized people of Ambazonia. We Ambazonians must win against the blood-stained Lucifer Biya criminal gangster regime only because it ensures our survival as a people. I leave you and our people with the words of our honored late Martin Luther King Jr., and I quote, "Change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle."
I wish we could go on a little longer, Professor Emmanuel Tata-Menta, but that is, I'm afraid, all the time we have got this week. And thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you for giving me this priceless opportunity, Ntumfoyn. Aluta continue, Victoria et certa.
When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty.
You cannot defeat our brave soldiers because they are warriors in the land of their birth. They have courage, they have determination. They've got nothing more to lose.
It is no longer a secret. The Biya terrorist regime has violated probably every resolution, every treaty, every article of the Geneva Convention, as we hear now in this report by Barrister C. Ajimvambe.
How many international laws, treaties, rules, statutes, and conventions has the Biya regime not fooled around with or outrightly violated? The most likely answer is very few. The probability is that the regime has violated every rule, convention, treaty, statutes on the books. It should therefore not come as a surprise to anyone that after declaring war on harmless, defenseless Ambazonians on November 30th, 2017, the Biya regime proceeded to systematically run afoul of international legal instruments of war, especially those rules enshrined in the Geneva Conventions, disregarding and violating them at every single turn. The Geneva Conventions and their supplementary protocols, in pertinent part, protect the basic rights of parties who are not involved in wartime fighting. Parties such as civilians, medical personnel, aid workers, wounded fighters, and even prisoners, both civilian and military. The conventions prohibit the targeting of civilians in general, shooting at them, engaging in other egregious acts such as destroying their property and means of survival, rape, and other forms of sexual violence against them. They also prohibit anyone from obstructing the provision of necessary humanitarian aid, preventing the provision of care and medical treatment to the sick and wounded, attacking medical workers, medical vehicles, and hospitals. The conventions prohibit torture and degrading treatment of prisoners, such as preventing provision of food and water and not allowing them to communicate with their loved ones. The Geneva Protocol on Biochemical Warfare specifically prohibits the use in war of asphyxiating, poisonous, or other gases and of bacteriological methods of warfare. As Ambazonians have observed and experienced over the last 2 years of total carnage in Ambazonia, the BIA regime has, without a doubt, made toilet paper out of the Geneva Conventions and its protocols.
Do you have a full list, some kind of roll call, even non-exhaustive, of the sins of commission and omission of the BIA regime with respect to all of these conventions?
The regime has bold-facedly engaged in all, and I mean all, prohibited activity, included but not limited to attacking civilian residential areas, shooting civilians, killing, raping and maiming, burning down homes, and in some cases with the owners still inside the homes, burning down entire villages, piling up dead bodies of civilians killed by La République du Cameroon forces and burning them, invading hospitals and preventing medical staff from treating patients, and even opening fire on both patients and medical staff, preventing detainees from communicating with loved ones, using chemical weapons, yes, I mean chemical weapons, on civilians, resulting in massive death due to asphyxiation. The question on the minds of many Ambazonians remains, what is the world? Especially the big guys who put together the rules of war that are binding on all 196 countries of the world. What are they doing about it? Can the BIA regime really go scot-free after rubbishing the Geneva Conventions, their protocols, and other applicable international law in such a dishonorable manner, causing such deep pain and loss to Ambazonians? The answers to these questions are definitely still blowing in the wind, given world politics and conspiracies. However, it is more likely than not that precedents shall be followed, such that Mr. BIA, his collaborators and facilitators shall be duly prosecuted for war crimes at the International Criminal Court, the African Court on Human and People's Rights, and any other court of applicable jurisdiction. Everything being equal, they shall share the same fate as their predecessor violators at the famous Nuremberg trials. The onus, the heavy onus, lies on Ambazonians to ensure that all the atrocities committed by the BIA regime in violation of the Geneva Conventions and other pertinent laws are well documented, the record kept robust and updated, and more importantly, that the campaign to expose and inform the world of the atrocities of the BIA regime never ends. This is C. Ajimvo Ambe for Ambazonia Calling.
This is Ambazonia Calling.
Because you have your army of occupation out in West Cameroon, you believe that when the people will rise, even if you took the whole of the French army and added to yours, you will never bring them down.
And I call on all Cameroon soldiers to lay down their arms within Ambazonia and to turn their arms against the very system that has made them slaves in the land of their birth.
As we just heard in that report by Barrister Sia Jimver-Ambe, the onus of documenting the atrocity crimes, crimes against humanity, and war crimes committed by La République du Cameroun in Ambazonia, that onus is on Ambazonians. But as the monk from Ibali Kumato, Vadzokov himself now reports, the Parliament of La République du Cameroun is doing some official documentation on its own in favor of Ambazonia.
Recently, in the Parliament of the Republic du Cameroun, Member of Parliament Simon Chinda of the SDF spoke on the floor, addressing the Minister Delegate for Defense at the Presidency.
I am addressing myself to the Minister of Defense, Minister Delegate of Defense. One of the reflections we are going to have, sir, is what lessons have we learned from Rwanda? Because after Rwanda, the world said, never again. And here we are now, phenomenon repeating itself. What have we learned from Nuremberg, the trials of Nuremberg, about the responsibilities in wartime? The lessons are clear. We have a responsibility to a civilian population, just as we have responsibilities to military, to combatant personnel. International humanitarian law on that is very, very clear.
He presented a 12-minute update of the situation in the southern Cameroon's Ambazonia.
As of today we are talking, you yourself, you gave us the figure of 84 soldiers that had died as of end of May. We are certain that there are more today. It's a disaster for our own soldiers to be dying in the process of killing their own brothers. As we were losing soldiers, our own estimate is that we have lost more than 2,000 civilians in the process. There's an estimate of about 170 villages that have been wiped out from the space of the globe, in what you call in French, rien ne bouge. It's a scorched earth policy. We have 120,000 refugees. We have counted about 9 camps in Nigeria where they're located. Most of us in our houses in Yaoundé, in Douala, Bafoussam, we have received overwhelming numbers of compatriots who are running away from a war zone.
Member of Parliament Simon Chinda reminded the Defense Minister of a memo with questions sent to the Defense Minister's office, apparently 9 months earlier.
We are now entering certain domains because in times of war, you don't know what is fact and what is fiction anymore.
Of course, the Member of Parliament had not received any feedback on the said questions.
You are in front of the people's representatives, and it is time you tell us what is actually happening.
At this point, an update of the current situation was in order. Here are some of the sticking issues about the war situation as highlighted by the Member of Parliament. That there is genocide in southern Cameroon's Ambazonia.
What you're seeing, sir, is a genocide that is taking place. We're told that chemical weapons are being used. These are all elements of genocide.
That as a result of a government-imposed curfew, the army and its agents are involved in the blatant extortion of citizens.
There are curfews that are being put in. Citizens are being arrested for no reason outside the curfew, and they have to pay significant sums of money, up to 250,000, to the army before they can be released. That's in the form of ransoms and everything.
That French troops with dogs have been seen in southern Cameroon's.
The French soldiers are already in the northwest. We saw pictures of some of them. They were coming with dogs to fight.
Prosecuting a war on the ground using drones meant for the fight against Boko Haram in northern Franco-Cameroon.
We are told that the drones that the Americans gave to be used to fight the Boko Haram are being used for their heat-seeking searches of people, that they are being used in the northwest and southwest.
That the government of République du Cameroun has used missiles and helicopter gunships on civilian populations.
That missiles are being used, surface-to-surface missiles, with a range of anything between 1.5 kilometers to 15 kilometers. We are told that helicopter gunships are being used, and you know the indiscriminate nature of the killing that can take place when you use a helicopter gunship, just as it happens when you use a missile.
That government military agents threaten doctors, nurses, and other hospital emergency staff and prevent them from doing their job, disabling the healthcare systems to to prevent the treatment of wounded and or sick citizens. Here is a representative of the people, a citizen politician of Southern Cameroons, addressing a senior officer of the military of the Republique du Cameroon about genocide, presence of foreign troops, launching of missiles, and use of helicopter gunships in civilian residential areas. A case of brother against brother with the help of French agents on the ground and US-made drones in the air. All this mobilization just to butcher citizens of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. Takes guts to speak openly and frankly about these issues in the Cameroonese context.
I don't want to go into the economy because it's not in your domain. But as you know, the economy has gone to the dogs. I mean, the Northwest and Southwest have essentially come to a stop. I'm calling on you to make sure that humanitarian law is being respected, as you know it should be.
We thank him for his useful words on the crisis, especially when he suggests the use of a language of peace.
You must cultivate the language of peace. Once you begin to refer to some persons as dogs or goats or as secessionists or terrorists, I think they will listen better if you say, my dear brother, let's meet on the table tomorrow to talk. It is not a sign of weakness to talk to your brother. Far from it, it's a sign of strength. It is not a sign of strength for a man full of muscles to beat his wife because he has the muscles. It's a sign of weakness. That man with the strength and everything faced with this in front of this woman would have many other techniques of convincing her, and believe you me, those techniques exist. And love is one of them. Mr. Biya must begin to talk. He must talk to his brothers. There must be an atmosphere of peace accompanied by a language of peace.
This is the monk from Ibalikumato, Vedrikov himself, for Ambazonia Calling.
There are those of you who feel, why am I supporting a cause whose end cannot be predicted? Do not feel tired. There are those of you who think that the enemy is too strong. Do not feel tired. Those of you who read the Bible, the only reason why David killed Goliath is because while everybody thought that he was too big to defeat, David knew that he was too big to miss. And I have my own conclusion that indeed that is how we should feel.
To come back to the one state is impossible because it doesn't work. We've seen it in Yugoslavia, we see it today in Cameroon. You can't put people who are so hostile to each other in one state.
It is impossible to expect the leadership of a revolution and the people at the grassroots to agree at all times. There will be moments, as have happened recently, when the leadership of the revolution says something and the people on the ground say nada. When that happens, lessons are learned. Here now is Tanyi Jude Agua Ozugen with the lessons he believes all Ambazonians must learn from the last time there was disagreement between leadership and grassroots.
Several lessons can and must be learned from this ghost town cancellation that never was. The first lesson is that the people of Ambazonia are standing guard. They send the clear message that they are not sheep. If the leaders think they can betray the people, if the leaders think they can make a deal for themselves and on the backs of the people, Ambazonians just sent a very strong signal, not under our watch. Lesson number 2, do the same thing and you will get the same outcome. Last September, and to the consternation of many Ambazonians, the IG group suspended the school's boycott campaign, acting in the same unilateral way it just did with the ghost town operation. The vituperative reactions from a swath of liberation struggle outfits which constrained a beleaguered IG group to rescind the school boycott did not ensure that the IG leadership learned lessons. Lesson number 3, like or hate other leaders like Dr. Lucas Cho Ayaba of AGC, their role in standing guard is indispensable. Depending entirely for decision-making and policy prescriptions from the IG group will be the Ambazonian equivalent of putting all restoration eggs in one basket. Lesson number 4, if any leader or group still thought they could sell the people, if any group or group of individuals still believe that whatever they decided and ordered the people will implement without question, the rejection of the lifting of ghost towns serves notice that the people know what they want and won't settle for less. Lesson number 5, for anyone who still believes that disarming Ambazonians, either as the AAC or as a council or as La Republique, are just as unpopular and the people will not yield. Not why the bias regimes hypes the carnage and scorched earth policy against our people. Lesson number 6, within every movement in this revolution, citizens are willing to stand up and oppose any action or decision they believe not to be in the interest of the people. That is the full meaning of that Sunday morning press release from ASC, the arm wing of the IG group, kicking against the IG in one of the many meandering subplots in a patently complicated storyline. Lesson number 7, it is clear that those willing to go against the will of the majority are very stubborn. The IG group did not take back the cancellation of the school's boycott, and on Sunday morning last week, Chris Anu was on a live Facebook video doubling down on his initial stance. Lesson number 8. While lifting ghost towns was a dangerous move likely to collapse the entire revolution, giving it demobilizing capacity, the biggest danger facing Ambazonia is that they should wake up one morning to hear that some leader or group, without so much as consulting the people, has signed some deal with, God forbid, our colonizers or their friends. The most worrying thing is that in the course of the ghost town lifting melodrama, the rest of the IG group stood transfixed, sending the most confusing signals ever from the diaspora and proving lack of vision. This topsy-turvy situation notwithstanding, the ghost town operation remains a huge success, demonstrating the independent-mindedness of Ground Zero. It unequivocally puts the diaspora on notice that their relevance to the revolution is sustained so long as they do what the people want, not what any leaders or groups or individuals want. Those who have ears should hear. This is Jude Agua Ozugen for Ambazonia Calling.
We don't do foolish, but when there are capital fools out there, we make it our duty to find them, and every week we crown one of them the Nyamfuka of the week. Here now to present the queens and kings of foolish for this week is Veronique Vetimfe.
Finishing in third place this week is an activist who still dreams that the Biya regime makes a distinction between federalism and independence. He traveled from his base in Germany to Ambazonia, cheerleading for the AGC of Cardinal Tumi. He has been wishing for the longest time that something happens to discredit the revolution and show federalists as having more support. Hard luck. Thanks to the reversal by all organizations of the call by Chris Anu for ghost towns to be suspended during the month of December, Paddy Asanga found himself in Ghost Town Boya, unable to celebrate what he had hoped for. Instead, Paddy Asanga was served proof in Boya last Monday that the people of Ambazonia are hell-bent on restoring independence. For wishing that Ambazonia will not emerge victorious, Paddy Asanga is this week's third place finisher for the crown of shame, the Nyamfuka of the week.
Nyamfuka them all.
Finishing in the position of runner-up this week is the author of another of those hate-filled videos that seek to divide Ambazonians along northwest-southwest lines. The xenophobic attacks this time came from an otherwise respected and respectable Mola, who for some reason this week completely lost it. Mola Wanja stepped out of line, spoke out of turn, out of character, and filled with hate in a video in which he went down the same road of hatred, once traveled by a certain Franklin Jume, and last week by the lady who was crowned the Queen of Shame. For fanning the flames of Northwest-Southwest divide, Mola Wanja is this week's runner-up for the crown of shame, the Nyamfuka of the week.
Nyamfuka them all.
Running away with the crown this week are the fake Amber Boys, recruited by the Biya regime and working for Paul Atanganji. Besides kidnapping students and teachers, besides extorting funds from Ambazonians, this week they filmed and posted scenes showing them committing torture and war crimes against Ambazonians. One of the videos showed them torturing a young Ambazonian. Paul Atanganji's thugs accused their victim of being a member of the regime-hired militia. The hope of the regime in shooting and releasing these videos is to convince the international community that Ambazonians are terrorists for their war crimes and crimes against humanity on Ambazonians. The regime-hired militia, calling themselves Amber Boys, but acting exactly as the regime wants them to act, are this week's winners of the crown of shame, the Nyamfuka of the week.
Nyamfuka them all.
This is Veronique Vetimfe for Ambazonia Calling.
While so many supporters and surrogates of the IG group continue to argue that no elections are needed in a revolution, one point they cannot argue is that if elections held, they would grant more legitimacy to the leadership of this revolution. Here with an analysis is Divine Anje.
Our revolution, like life itself, is a balance of opposites. There is a thesis and there is an antithesis. And then, of course, there is an emerging synthesis. The truth lies in the emerging synthesis. It is therefore foolhardy for people who claim to be leaders of Ambazonia to stand in the way of the only thing that would grant them legitimacy, elections. The Ambazonian revolution needs legitimate leaders. But like the proverbial ostrich, the IG group has buried its head into the sands of greed, scapegoating, misinformation, and self-aggrandizement, and refused to see beyond its beautiful feathers. The worst crime in a revolution is to assume that you speak for the people, when indeed you speak just for a few WhatsApp warriors, to mistake the tree for the forest. In Achebe's Things Fall Apart, Okonkwo was a quintessential African man, a man of great wealth and honor, who brought fame to his family and to Omovia. Yet, when in his overzealousness, he drew his machete in the assumption that he had the mandate to lead the revolution against the white man, Okonkwo realized too late that he was alone. The evil forest became his eternal home after he hanged himself. Such a fate is not the reserve of Okonkwo and Omovia. It will be ours unless we can step back from this long-held opposition to elections and reflect on a few questions. When you answer the following questions objectively, you would understand why elections are an essential part of the solution Ambazonians seek. Which other government in Africa or the world has been recognized and seated by the African Union or the United Nations without that government being first elected? Or in the case of the Bias of this world, still in elections? Do we really think the self-proclaimed government of Ambazonia will become the first to force the international community to conform to the will of those Ambazonians who claim that their government does not need to be elected? If it were to be so easy for anyone to declare themselves the government of X, Y, and Z country and be recognized by the African Union or the United Nations, why would many other such governments of peoples from disputed territories not emerge? What criteria would the African Union, the United Nations use to argue that they are recognizing the self-proclaimed government because those Ambazonians who support independence far outnumber those for federalism and or those for the status quo? If indeed you happen to believe that at some point, through mere force of insistence and perseverance, the African Union and the United Nations will yield to your wish of recognizing the self-proclaimed government, do you also think that it makes your case better or worse to have an election established clearly that a majority of our people want independence versus all other options? If you happen to believe, as I sincerely do, that an election helps our case for independence and recognition, why are people who claim to be also working for independence resisting the very elections that are bound to improve the chances of Ambazonia winning recognition? These people challenge everyone else to do things they have not accomplished themselves. They ask the conveners of the AGC to use their energy to get the United Nations to conduct a referendum, a responsibility and task they could not assign to themselves. They ask them who gave them the mandate to speak on behalf of Ambazonians, a question that is begging for them to answer. We at Ambazonia Calling can make only one guess. Those opposed to elections fear that if the people were allowed to vote in free and fair elections, the people may not vote to maintain them in power. It is a legitimate fear to have and to express plainly and clearly, instead of hiding behind the claim that there are no elections in a revolution. This is Divine Angie for Ambazonia Calling.
What we seek is freedom, and we must conduct ourselves with the highest degree of integrity towards our friends and towards our foes. We cannot use the same methods that the occupier has used against us.
Ambazonia Calling. You are in the heart of the news shrine. Call us the Kalakuta Republic of commentary, opinion, and editorials. Doing nothing and saying nothing either for or against in a revolution is usually very, very dangerous, as Christoph Hans Messner now reports.
Fellow Amberlanders, we hear social media activists criticizing each other hard, group members calling IG members Nyamfukas and vice versa, and sometimes the discussions lead to insults and threats. But in my estimation, all this should not worry us, because the real problem in our struggle are not heated debates, but silent, inactive fence-sitters who never give a contribution to the revolution. Activists can make mistakes, but at least they do something, they try something. So we should rather focus on praising anybody who is doing or trying something for Ambazonia's liberation, and focus our critique on those who still do nothing, or worse, who silently comply with the BIA regime. We really need to talk hard into the conscience of these characterless or coward or hesitated fellows, especially inside our family. Maybe they still do nothing because they just can't believe that boys in the bush can defeat an army of a state with France in the back. But I tell you, Ambazonia will defeat BIA, because BIA is a senile and makes more and more mistakes. His policy of oppression and genocide is only producing more and more motivation of everybody anywhere to go against his regime by all means. A people who is pushed against the wall of mere existence is becoming a dangerous tiger. And in fact, more and more Ambazonians have understood that guerrilla and secrecy and camouflage can be very, very effective, and that there is a reason why the Vietnamese defeated America. So please, just stop worrying about social media teacup wars and focus on doing the right thing secretly without making any ado about it anywhere. And if you are not so competent on the field of guerrilla warfare, then just help all groups in the IG to send out the truth about Ambazonia and La Dictature de Cameroon into the world. Many foreign governments may not support Ambazonia's independence yet, but billions of people have a sympathy for Ambazonia as soon as they hear the true story and understand that Ambaland's sovereignty is fully on legal grounds. Always point out that it is Cameroon occupying Ambazonia and not the other way around. So who is the aggressor? Who is the defender? We are on the right side, and Bia's clock is ticking. Almost the whole world is tired of France-Afrique's atrocities and exploitations. We just need to give a little extra push to those in slumber who didn't realize yet that the new Africa is learning at the speed of light and will kick out the octopus people no matter what. Christoph Messner for Ambazonia Calling.
We understand their Tanganjis and their collaborators are plotting and scheming within Ambazonia to give us a bad name. And we have made it clear they can kidnap, they can abduct. Ambazonians will never be tagged as terrorists because we conduct ourselves in the highest sense of the discipline, following the code of conduct laid down by our defense forces, understanding the spirit of the 4 Geneva Conventions on the laws of war.
Restoration train is going to restoration train. Restoration train is going to restoration train. Restoration train is serving restoration train on the restoration journey of our liberty. So get on now on the train. Everybody get on now on the train. Mothers, fathers, get on now on the train. Children, get on now on the train. Sister, brothers, get on now on the train. Husbands, wives too, get on now on the train.
When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty. We, the people of West Cameroon, will resist you, and if you want to take that territory by force, you will kill to the last man before you take it.
There will be no negotiation with the BR regime. We will battle them block by block until we bleed them out of our homeland. Define the nature of the termination of the occupation of our homeland.
The road to independence for Ambazonia will be built on a series of victories, such as the one that was won when Cameroon was taken off the list as the host nation for the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations. Innocent Cha says why Ambazonians must continue with those street protests and letter-writing campaigns and petition writings.
There is no doubt the decision of the Confederation of African Football to yank the organization of the 2019 Continental Soccer Bonanza from Cameroon is being viewed worldwide as the worst tsunami to have hit President Biya. The question is, why is this of any significance to Ambazonia and the Ambazonians? Beyond Cameroon's shame and humiliation, what does Ambazonia stand to benefit? Before all else, let me do the unusual here of attributing this to God Almighty, whose timing is perfect at all times and in everything. For truly, while there may have been a splash had CAO's president Ahmad made the announcement prior to Cameroon's presidential elections, Biya would have had an excuse in the very unlikely event that everything in his well-lubricated election thieving machine had failed abysmally. The story would have been about Biya losing the election, and the focus would have shifted to giving Kamto, for instance, an opportunity to fix things. This would have waylaid the plans, Consequently, there would not have been the tsunami effect there is now, especially as the world watches with rapt attention Ferrovial and the vampire nation of Cameroon using chemical weapons in Ambazonia. CAF's decision is important because in their final communique, it acknowledges what some organizations in the pocketbooks of Cameroon have been fighting to belittle and wish away: insecurity in Ambazonia. The world now knows who has been telling lies, including the United Nations Secretary General and the various UN bodies. Ambazonians must rejoice and be glad in the CAF decision because hosting would have been a serious distraction from the cause. A good number of soccer fans in Ambazonia would have been pleading their case for a little break while the games lasted. Finally, the decision is a reminder for Ambazonians not to give up with the petitions and letter writing, otherwise known as targeted diplomacy. If the AGC and other entities had given up the idea of writing just one more letter to CAF, it is possible CAF may have reached a different conclusion. Innocent Chia, Ambazonia Calling.
For more stories from around the world, go to the World Wide Web at themissionstribune.com, compassfreepress.com, and africafreedomnetwork.com.
Here is our letter to Joshua.
Dear Joshua, please accept my condolences on the occasion of the Cry for the Africa Cup of Nations. More bad news is coming, Joshua. As you know, Côte d'Ivoire is getting ready to seize the tournament from you the same way, because you can never be ready. Not in 2035, not in 2050, not ever. Look, it never rains, but it pours, Joshua. I'm still waiting to see what you will do seriously to punish the people who did not build the stadia, did not build the infrastructure for the tournament. Or you're not even going to punish them because they're all members of le pays organisateur, la tribu du ventre. They're all your cousins, your nieces, your friends, your brothers and sisters who have just devoured the entire state, and you're getting a percentage. So this is not bad. This is not bad, Joshua. When it comes to Ambazonians, you arrest them very quickly. You arrest the poor ones from the village. You lock them up. You kill them. But when it comes to le pays organisateur, you're trapped because you are in the deal. If you arrest any one of them, they're going to sing. You're going to be in trouble too. And you know, at this point, when grandson Manu Macron has trouble with the yellow vests, he doesn't want to see trouble because he doesn't want them to go to red vests. Forget finishing off with the infrastructure. If you build all the infrastructure in the world, the most beautiful infrastructure, you will still not host the Africa Cup of Nations because Ambazonia will be there to deny you the right to host anything. You will not host any tournament until Ambazonia is a sovereign nation and an accredited member of FIFA, CAF, United Nations, the African Union, and other international organizations. I mean, nothing is working for you. Nobody seems to like you. Your National Commission on Human Rights doesn't agree with you. They don't understand how you can do demobilization, disarmament, and rehabilitation without even agreeing with the other side. The United Nations doesn't agree with you, Joshua. The United States Congress has just slapped you in the face. Nothing about that nonsense of violence on both sides. Your government is totally responsible for the violence. You know, everything that you try to impose has not worked. Unité nationale has not worked. Vivre ensemble has not worked. Rigor and moralization has not worked. Building a united country has not worked. Imposing a one and indivisible has not worked. Imposing disarmament, demobilization, and rehabilitation has not and will not work. If that sounds like a poor grade, that sounds like 0 over 100. That's exactly the score. You are about the worst thing that ever happened to mankind. Definitely the worst thing that ever happened to the Cameroons. But I like the fact that you found some enemies that you intend to torture, people you have appointed into positions just so Boko Haram can kill them. Is that it? Is that the new thing? The guy who had trouble, who could not leave the country, who was awaiting to go to jail if he did not prove his innocence. Now he has to do the difficult job for you. That's nice. You find them all the time. They're always hanging around. No way for them to hide. Once in your pocket, always in your pocket. Have you heard what's happening with your entourage, Joshua? They managed to hack into your phones. They got everything. They got all the details about members of your regime getting involved, entangled in all kinds of business, even saying stupid things about you in your back. Members of your government laughing when they're talking about the assassination of the American missionary, Reverend Charles Truman Wesco, laughing about the fact that he was killed, laughing about the fact that Bishop Bala of Bafia was assassinated. Joshua, what kind of regime do you run? Do you know all of that is now out there? The only thing surprising now is that you are not yet at the Hague, at the ICC. You have been listening to Ambazonia Calling. We came to you from our studios here in Washington, D.C. Our producers today, Jeff McCoy, Logistics, Joe Costa, and Krista Cunningham. Our music is from Ken Wanaku, the monk, from Balikumato Fazokov himself, from William Ford, an Amber music star of blessed memory, from Eric Matisse on the web at soundimage.org, and from Prince Ajwa Alem of Ajam, Sonicatron, USA. Ambazonia Calling is a joint production of Africa Freedom Network, the Missions Tribune, and Compass Free Press. You can find us on the web at missionstribune.com, at compassfreepress.com, and at africafreedomnetwork.com. Next Sunday is another date. Until then, keep the spirit, keep the faith, keep up the good fight for justice and independence for Ambazonia. Stay Amber strong.